Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, and welcome to this horror movie review for day 8 of my 31 Days of Halloween horror series. So, sorry about the lighting, first of all. I got the sun I guess it's the wrong time of the day for me to be shooting this, but you're going to see like very angelic on the side of my head, like angel like. So, yeah, right. Um, Anyway, today we're going to go ahead and check out a horror remake from a late 50s movie. And that movie is from 1988, The Blob. That cool cover right there. So yeah, I have The Blob on DVD. This is the first time watch for me. I haven't seen the original Blob from 1958, and I never saw this remake until getting ready for this review for the series here. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Um, I have heard that The Blob's one of the three greatest 80s remakes, right there with The Thing and The Fly, which I have seen. So that kind of has high expectations to begin with, because I do think The Fly from 86 and The Thing from 82 are awesome movies. So definitely some of my favorite from the 80s. And even though I haven't seen the original for those movies, just like I haven't seen the original to this one, I have to imagine that they probably are right when they say the remake's better than the originals, the three best remakes, horror remakes. So we'll see. But getting into it, The Blob's a 1988 American science fiction horror film, co-written and directed by Chuck Russell, who obviously did Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, many people's favorite of that series. It's a remake of the 1958 film of the same name. Um, the plot follows an acidic amoeba-like organism that crashes to Earth in a military satellite, which devours and dissolves anything in its path as it grows. It is the third film in the Blob film series, so there must have been a sequel to that 1958 Blob too. I'm not sure what year that would have been, but considering this is the third film in the Blob series, so it's the only one I've seen so far. So basically, the movie opens as a meteorite crashes near Arborville, California. An elderly vagabond discovers within a sphere a massive slime mold like substance that adheres to his hand. Three local high school students, Brian, Meg, and Paul, take him to the hospital. After Brian leaves, Paul witnesses the lower half of the rescued man melting from exposure to the blob. As he calls for help, the blob drops on top of him, I should say. Meg arrives to see Paul being consumed by the growing blob. She tries freeing him, but his arm dissolves off. Meg is thrown against a wall and knocked unconscious. The blob fully dissolves Paul and oozes out of the hospital. So then, after Brian and Meg have an unsatisfactory encounters with the police, they meet at a diner where tells Brian about the blob. Brian's disbelief is shattered when the diner's handyman, George, is violently pulled into the sink's drain, killing him. The increasingly large creature pursues them in the diner's walk-in freezer, but it retreats after they enter the freezer. After consuming the diner's own Fran Hewitt and Sheriff Geller, the blob re-enters the sewers. Meg and Brian return to the police station where the dispatcher tells them Deputy Briggs is near the meteor landing site. So that's the setup and the premise of this movie. As far as the cast goes, of course, we have Kevin Dillon as Brian Flag, two G's, not sure how you pronounce that. Shawnee Smith, a very young Shawnee Smith, as Meg Penny. Donovan Letch as Paul Taylor. Jeffrey DeMunn as Sheriff Herb Geller. Candy Clark as Fran Hewitt. Joe Seneca as Dr. Meadows. And Del Close as Reverend Meeker. Also, I have to mention Paul McRae is in this movie, and he plays the deputy, I think. He's most notably from the show ER, of course, from the 90s and 2000s. He played Dr. Romano, not a very well liked character in that movie. In this character, he doesn't start out particularly to be well liked either, but he does kind of come around. But just kind of an interesting tidbit there. So that's the setup, the premise, and the cast for the 1988 remake, The Blob. Um, I was really blown away by this movie, I'll be honest with you. I really did enjoy it, right up there with The Thing and The Fly, as far as those three remakes, and this one being three top notch remakes. I'd also throw the 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre in there, as far as horror remakes go, that I really love. Um, but yeah, let's just I was just blown away by the Blob, and it's not a perfect movie by any means, but it's damn good, and it's really an enjoyable horror movie. So let's just get into it, starting with the things I liked about the movie and my pros. So, obviously, when you're talking about this Blob remake, like many people will say, you have to start with the practical effects in this movie. As cheesy as the Blob should be, and it somewhat is, the practical effects they use in terms of the pink ooze, the Blob, the growingness of it, the size of it. Um, and then the kills and the melting body parts of people, it really works. It's believable and effective. Like I said, the pink ooze and its increasing size, swallowing up people, and then the melting and death effects are really good in this movie. Though that's really what's going to stand out about this movie. When somebody's going to say the Blob from 1988, that's the first thing I'm going to think of are those awesome practical effects as it relates to the pink ooze as it grows, swallowing people, and those melting scenes of body parts and bodies in general. It's just really good stuff. Some of the best practical effects I've seen in a horror movie, quite frankly. It really adds it makes it a fun and enjoyable ride of a movie as a result of those practical effects. Also, it's a really well paced movie. I was surprised by how fast the movie went, and there's not really any slow spots or lulls. They kind of get into the movie with the setting and the characters and everything set you up, and then they get right into this blob landing in this meteor on Earth, and it just kind of goes from there. And so yeah, very well paced movie, thanks to great directing, of course, by Chuck Russell. Um, but yeah, from the beginning to the end, it flows really well, and from the setup at the beginning through the development of the Blob coming to be on the scene of this town through the final confrontation and climax of the movie. Like I said, no slow spots. Also, I have to say Kevin Dillon and Shawnee Smith are really pretty solid as the main characters here. I mean, they're not their performances aren't groundbreaking or Oscar worthy or anything like that. But as far as '80s horror movies go, I thought they were both good. I believed them in their roles and what they had to do. Um, so yeah, despite the fact that the characters in the movie themselves aren't, well, we'll get into that with my cons, but I thought those two specifically did a good job given what they had to work with. Um, I really enjoyed the tone of the movie overall that Chuck Russell went for here. Obviously, this movie doesn't take itself too seriously. It kind of knows what it is and it has fun with it, and that's thanks to Chuck Russell's directing. It's silly and cheesy, but in an effective way. It's not like overly cheesy or overly silly. It's still got those horrific elements to it, but it definitely is in the vein of that 80s cheese horror, which I really love, actually. It is a very well written and well directed movie by both Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont, who also did, of course, Nightmare 3, as I said, Dream Warriors. They're a good team. They really work well together. I thought they executed the vision of the story, the screenplay that was written well, and they executed both the story and the horror really well in this movie. Um, but yeah, and overall, it's just a really fun and effective 80s creature feature, which we didn't get a lot of, quite frankly, with wonderful practical effects and great pacing. That's really the best way to sum up this movie. Just really enjoyed the look of the blob, the effectiveness because of the practical effects of the blob, and the pacing of this movie. Those are definitely the standouts from a pro standpoint. Getting into some cons, there are a few cons. This is more of a personal one that I have to bring up, but I'm not crazy about the whole reason for the blob existing, which basically is another government conspiracy, cover up relating to biological warfare reasons during the Cold War. We've seen it all before, over and over and over again. Now, this movie did come out in 1988, so I guess we hadn't seen it as much then as we have now at the time that this movie came out. But it's just kind of tired and played out to me for these bad things existing and regular people suffering the consequences due to their government. Yeah, I could do without that. I would have rather not got that much of an explanation, or at least not the whole government cover up explanation. I just feel that that's been a little too played out. Maybe it's just me. You can comment down below if you agree or disagree, but I guess it works fine for doing it here, but again, I just can't help but roll my eyes a little bit when that's given to us again. There are as good as the practical effects are in this movie. There are some green screen digital effects that don't age quite as well in this movie. Basically, those scenes where the blob's in the background and certain actors jump in and scamper away, you can clearly tell there's a green screen involved there with digital effects. Yeah, those don't age very well. They don't come across looking great on screen. Um, Also, they kind of blow their load a little early in this movie when it comes to the awesome kills. Most of them happen in the first act of the movie, which I guess is okay because you want to really. I would say the viewer's already pretty engaged in the movie by that time. It would have just been nice if they would have used some of those awesome kills. Like you have the best kill, of course, is the drain kill, where the guy's literally sucked through the drain by the blob. And then there's some cool ones at the movie theater. I wish they would have saved some of those for later in the movie, like the second half of the movie. They kind of blow their wad a little early there, and it kind of loses steam as a result. Not to say the second half of the movie isn't really good yet, but I do feel like the first half of the movie's better because of those awesome kills and what we see on screen with the practical effects. There's just not as much awesome goriness related to the kills or anything as shocking in the second half of the movie. As I said, I think they should have saved at least one or two towards the end of the movie for the climax. Also, the other big con that I have is most of the characters in this movie are kind of cliche caricatures. AKA, you got the rough around the edges badass. We've seen all too often before. The jock, the girl next door. I will say something about the jock before I'm done with this review, but the girl next door character, just characters we've seen before, and then a lot of side characters. You know, you get your typical law enforcement, which are oblivious to what's going on and don't believe anything, despite some evidence to the contrary. And a lot of the characters are just kind of there, frankly, for the blob to swallow them and kill them. None of them are overly interesting, or all that well developed, and that's kind of par for the course for '80s horror movies. But that was definitely something that stood out to me. A lot of the characters are caricatures that are just kind of there. I will say I did like the fact that the jock character, played by Donovan Leitch, who played Paul Taylor, who is the jock character, they went Hitchcockian on it, and they set him up to be like one of the protagonists, that's going to be there all the way through the movie, and he isn't. That's all I'll say. I'm not going to say how soon he dies or anything like that, but I did enjoy what they did there. That's definitely because it gives you that whole, well, if he can die, anybody can die vibe, just like the original Psycho did, and I really enjoyed. Clearly, they took a page out of Hitchcock's playbook on that. So I will say that for the that's not really a character thing. It's more of a writing and directing thing that I really enjoyed. So that's pretty much all I got for my cons. Overall, guys, this is a really enjoyable '80s remake horror movie. I love the Blob. I really was blown away from, again, especially by these type of effects, the practical effects here. If they tried to remake this movie now, you know it would be 90% CGI and it would look terrible. Sorry, but I'm a little biased when it comes to that. I'm going to give this movie an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's pretty phenomenal. Not perfect. As I said in my cons, it does have a few issues that stick out to me, but a lot more good than bad here. And this is a movie I could put on a Friday night with a group of friends. It's just very enjoyable, very fun. As I said, they didn't try to go overly serious with it. They knew what they had here. There's also some comedic elements I should mention that work for the most part in this movie. It's not overly comedic, but it's part of the silliness and the fun and the cheesiness of the movie. So definitely check out The Blob from 1988, the remake. I can't compare it to the original, obviously, because I haven't seen it, so I can't hold the line like a lot of people do that the remake's better than the original. I'll have to see the original someday to say that. But 8.5 out of 10 for this 1988 remake of The Blob, for my day 8 as part of my 31 Days of Halloween Horror series. Hope you enjoyed this review. Check out the movie. Please like this video. Hit the like button. Hit the little notification bell down below so you don't miss any of my upcoming reviews. And be sure to subscribe to my channel as well so you don't miss any of my great horror content beyond this series. So, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this review. Happy October once again, and stay scared. Bye.